بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم آمين. وبعد. We continue with سفينة النجاة by Sheikh Salim ibn Abdullah al-Hadrami rahimahullah ta'ala ونفعنا الله بعلومه في الدارين آمين. Yesterday we covered the rulings on istinja and istijmar, the ruling of wiping and washing after relieving oneself, and we covered that there are 3 degrees to options of how to cleanse oneself after using the restroom. The most complete and perfect one is to wipe and then to wash. The second option is to wash only and to not wipe. And the last option is to wipe only and to not wash. And we said contrary to Muslim belief, common belief, is that you only can wash. But no, actually in Sharia it is permissible and completely allowed for a person to wipe themselves after using the restroom. And this is for both urine and stool. They can wipe themselves without washing at all. And the minimum requirement for that is that they wipe 3 times. And if they do that, then it is sufficient and they can make their salah and they're pure and so on and so forth. Although washing is better, if water is not available or you're using a public restroom and you don't have access to water or for whatever reason, it is sufficient and permissible to wipe. And the best form is to combine, to wipe first and then to wash after. And we said there are some requirements and conditions which the author stated them in the book. And so for those who were not here, I inshallah refer to the book and refer to the recording from last night. We also covered the pillars of wudu. The obligatory acts of wudu are 6. There are 6 acts of wudu that have to be performed, otherwise the wudu is invalid. The first one is intention. The second is washing the face, and we said the definition of the face is from where the average hairline begins to below the jawbone. And so that entire, from below the jawbone to where the average hairline begins, and from ear to ear. If a person washes their face and they stop at their sideburns, their wudu is invalid and therefore their salah is invalid. And so it is very, very critical that they understand the definition of the face, which is hairline to jawbone, ear to ear, not sideburn to sideburn. And then the third part is that they wash both arms, including the hand and the elbow. And we mentioned a common mistake people make is they think that they don't have to wash the hand. They think the arm only means from the wrist up, and that is incorrect. If they skip the hands when washing their arms, their wudu is invalid. Even if they washed their hands before. The hands and the arms must be washed together, and the elbow must be included. If the hand is left out, the arm is left out, or the elbow, and we said often a common mistake people sometimes might make is they roll up their sleeve and they stop here. And they wash to their elbow, that is still insufficient. You have to wash beyond the elbow and go above the elbow. If you stop at the elbow, that wudu is considered invalid and therefore salah is invalid. And so it is important that we get that right as well. Hand, arm, and elbow. That is the third requirement. The third pillar. The fourth is wiping part of the head, not the entire head. Just wiping part of the head is sufficient. If some people took some water and wiped their head, khalas, that's sufficient. The sunnah is to wipe the whole head front to back. That's the sunnah. But the wajib is just to wipe part of the head. And with regards, and then the 5th pillar is to wash the feet, including the ankles. And so when a person washes their feet, again, they cannot stop at the ankles. They have to wash above the ankles. The ankles have to be washed along with the feet. A common mistake that is made is people stop at the ankle. And then last is to do this in this order. If a person messes up the order, then the wudu is invalid. Everything outside of this is sunnah. So washing right before left is sunnah. Saying Bismillah in the beginning is sunnah. Rinsing the mouth, washing the hands, rinsing the mouth, rinsing the nose, washing 3 times, doing the right before the left. All of these a'mal are sunnah. Doing the ears with the head is sunnah. Doing the entire head is sunnah. All of these a'mal are sunnah and should be performed, but it's important that we identify the obligatory acts, the arkan, so that our wudu is valid. And then the sunnah complete the wudu and complete the reward of performing the wudu. And we mentioned the wudu has many virtues. One of the virtues of wudu is that we shared the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, he saw once a man who made wudu, but his heel was dry. Just his heel. So he washed his feet, but he didn't get the back of his heel. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, woe to the heel from the hellfire. Or woe to the heels from the hellfire. And so we mentioned that the fire doesn't burn the limbs of wudu. And in a narration that for the sujood, the limbs of sujood. And so part of that is the feet. And so making sure that one washes those limbs properly is absolutely critical for the validity of their salah and also for protection on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Another virtue of the wudu is that it is a sign of iman. No one preserves their wudu except a true believer. That's a hadith. So if a person has the habit of making their wudu regularly, it is a sign that their iman is true. They're always in a consistent state of purity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The munafiqeen, they only make their wudu when they have to pray in public to show off. But the believer who's sincere always makes his wudu. So it's a sign of iman. If a person prays their salah and prays their wudu, it is a testimony to their faith. Of the greatest virtues of wudu is that it is the mark of this ummah on the day of Qiyamah. Sahaba asked the Messenger ﷺ, how will you recognize us among the billions of human beings that are resurrected and all the creation on the day of judgment? The Prophet ﷺ said, by the limbs of your wudu, by the traces of your wudu, the limbs of wudu will shine bright, will be illuminating on the day of judgment. And that is going to be the unique identity of this ummah. They will stand out like the stars stand out at night. They will be known on the plane of Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so all of these show us that wudu is an absolutely critical part of ibadah that we can't take lightly, and we must make sure to perform correctly. And so now tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to get into the definition of intention and the sunnah way to perform all the sunnah of wudu, the sunnah way to perform wudu. So the author, rahimahullah, he says, intention is to intend something simultaneously with the action. Its place is in the heart. And so here the author, he says, this is on page 13 for those who are following, intention is to intend something simultaneously with the action. Its place is in the heart. To make a verbal intention is a sunnah. And I'll explain what that means. Its time is at the beginning of washing the first portion of the face. All right, so here he speaks about the intention. He mentioned a few things. Number one, he said, intention is to intend simultaneously, to intend something simultaneously with the action. So in the Shafi'i school, they're probably the most strict school when it comes to niyyah, or of the most strict madhahib. They require that the niyyah be consciously brought to mind at the time, the first moment of that a'mal. So the first moment you're making wudu, you bring your intention to mind and you make wudu. That is the requirements of the Shafi'i school. And that is the majority opinion. And then they say, its place is in the heart, although yes, it is something that you consciously perform. They said to say it verbally is sunnah. What does sunnah mean over here? It doesn't mean the Prophet ﷺ did it. It does not mean that at all. Remember, we said that sunnah is a synonym for mustahab. It is something recommended, right? So why did they say that? They said, pronouncing the intention helps you bring it to mind. Right? When you have a thought, when you verbalize your thought, it's easier to focus. It's easier to focus. So they said it's sunnah from that point. They said it is a means to strengthen your intention. And that is why they claimed it to be sunnah. Other schools and other scholars have refuted the Shafi'iyah aggressively. And some of them have even said that this is a bid'ah, which is an extreme opinion. They said that this is an innovation of religion. Ibn Taymiyyah had that opinion, rahimahullah. And that is actually a deviant opinion. Nobody calls this opinion bid'ah. Ibn Taymiyyah, he deviated in his opinion on that matter. Majority of the scholars, they say, no, it's not sunnah. If you do it to assist you, that's fine. But we don't claim that it's sunnah or recommended outside of the Shafi'i school. They don't say it's sunnah. And so just to kind of provide that information so that we know where are the scholars coming from. A lot of people, they think Islam, everything in the deen has to be practiced by the Prophet ﷺ. we have to see the Prophet ﷺ do it or it's not part of the deen. And that is completely wrong. That is not how the sunnah is in Sharia. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, he never had a mushaf. He never wrote the Quran in a form, in a book, and had it compiled. Nor was his sunnah compiled. When Sayyidina Abu Bakr compiled it, Sayyidina Umar suggested it to him. And he told him, compile the Quran because it's getting lost. It's going to get lost if we don't start compiling it, because many of the Huffaz were dying in battle. So Sayyidina Umar suggested, Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, I cannot do something the Messenger of Allah ﷺ didn't do. Sayyidina Umar said, we have to because it is the interest of the Muslimin. This is what they call the fuqaha, they call this maslaha mursala. It is something that is beneficial to the deen and to the Muslims. Although there's no text saying that we're supposed to compile the Quran, and although Rasulullah ﷺ didn't compile the Quran in a book, this has to be done for the benefit of the ummah, or the religion of Allah will be corrupted. And so again, he used reason and judgment to do something the Prophet ﷺ didn't do. So this is very, very abundant. Every school has different masail and different opinions. They recommend actions that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do, but they said there's a reason. They said there's a wisdom, there's a benefit. It helps in the worship of Allah. It helps you in perform your ibadah. Such was like that of Taraweeh. The Prophet ﷺ, he never gathered the community. There was never a Ramadan where the Prophet ﷺ prayed with the community for an entire month. Such a thing did not exist. He did it for a few nights, a few odd nights. Or a few nights, and then he stopped. But then, and during the time of Abu Bakr, nobody did it. But then during the time of Umar, the entire community did it, and the Muslims did it for generations after. So now Umar, he found a benefit. If we gather the people to pray Taraweeh collectively, it will be more efficient. It will bring people together and unify the ummah, make worship easier for the people, instead of people praying randomly and individually on their own. Again, he used his judgment, he used reason, he used evidences of Sharia to unify the words of the Muslimin, to command something that wasn't directly commanded by the Prophet ﷺ. And so this is very important, because one of the mistakes of modern age is that even by well-recognized scholars at times, the way they understand what is sunnah and what is bid'ah is often very flawed. There's flaws in that thinking. And so although the Shafi'iyya got criticized for their opinion on saying that the niyyah saying it verbally is sunnah, they have a very good logical reason. And anybody when you think, speak your thoughts and your thoughts will stick better. Even in psychological studies, they say if you want to change a habit, say those words to yourself every day. Remind yourself verbally every day. Is going to help you make those thoughts stick in your head and become a behavior. So it's proven. It's something that is part of human nature. And so they said, since this is done, and they also said the Prophet ﷺ, he made his hajj, his intention for hajj and umrah out loud. So they said it's not completely new or completely an innovation. It was done in other ibadat. So we can make qiyas, we do analogy, and so if our intention helps, they encourage it in that form. Again, this is the Shafi'iyya using their reason and fiqh and judgment. This is not any explicit hadith. This is their reason. So many of the Shafi'i countries, you see it in many of the Shafi'i lands, Egypt, Somalia, Indonesia, Malaysia, they practice the intention in this form. They say, nawaitu farz salat al-dhuhr, Allahu Akbar. Very common, that's how they do their intention. In many parts of the world, you'll find that. And so it's something widely adopted, practiced by Ahlul Sunnah. So to claim it's an innovation is a complete extremism. And really inappropriate to make such a claim. But a person can say, you know what, I don't prefer that. Personally, I'm a Shafi'i, but I've never really found the need to make my intention out loud. It is sufficient. But if a person finds it helpful and it's good for them and it helps them focus, alhamdulillah, go for it. Bismillah, there's nothing wrong with it. And to claim that that's an innovation, that is ignorance and inappropriate. And so, wallahu alam, that is just a summary of where the Shafi'i get that opinion and some of the refutations that has been put against him. Now I'm going to comment on the other mas'ala. The Shafi'is and the majority of the scholars, they require the intention to be made at the first act of ibadah, the first wajib. So when you say Allahu Akbar, you make the intention right before you say Allahu Akbar. I am praying the obligation of dhuhr, Allahu Akbar. That is how they require it. This is the opinion of the majority of the scholars. And truth be told, this is very difficult to practice. Especially when you're busy, your mind is scattered. You know what you want to pray, but it's kind of hard to gather your thoughts and make that intention simultaneously at that moment. And so in those, and because of that, the Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, he was questioned that if a man comes to salah and doesn't make his intention, is his salah valid? He said, why did he leave his home? The meaning of it. He said he left his home to pray asr or to pray dhuhr or whatever reason. He said that's his intention. Like the fact that you knew you came to the masjid to perform an ibadah, you went to the wudu area, is an indication that you made the intention to perform wudu. You coming to the masjid is an indication that you have intention to perform salah. So in that school, right, they say, and so this is an opinion of the Hanbali school, they say that your effort prior to this ibadah, if it is an indication that you're intending to perform this ibadah, then you're khalas, that's sufficient. That is your intention. So that is the more lenient, more practical way of performing the intention. And so I think that is completely fine and permissible to adopt. But I still, with that, I always try to make the practice myself to bring the intention to mind. But if for some reason I forget or my mind is distracted or whatever reason, the opinion of the Hanbali school is a valid opinion to adopt and to practice. Wallahu a'lam. So this is something very important to understand and to know the options we have and where the fuqaha are coming from. And then he says the definition, he says tartib, sequence, is to observe the sequence of wudu such that no latter limb of wudu should precede a former limb. So he just defines the sixth pillar, which is tartib, to do the wudu in sequence. Any questions about intention or the rulings of intention? No? Pretty.
The morning, right? You go to work, so you make intention for wudu for what duhur or wajib for every dress. Before you put a sock on, and after that you can wipe.
No, you just make intention for wudu. The socks has nothing to do with intention. So when you make wudu for fajr, you made wudu intention, that's it. And then when you, if you have the same wudu, then you have wudu. No, because you already made your wudu and you have intention for your wudu. Some of the scholars, they used to keep their wudu throughout the 5 prayers. So it's fine. If you have your one wudu all day, you don't have to make your intention for wudu because you only have to do wudu once. Does that make sense? You only do intention at the time of that one wudu.
So we don't need to bring up duhur, asar, maghrib.
No. You just say wudu. I'm making wudu, Allah, bismillah. That's it. That's it. I'm making fard wudu. You don't even have to add for the sake of Allah. You can, but the intention is you know the ibadah, you know what you're doing, and that is obligatory. But if you add for the sake of Allah, it increases the ikhlas. But that is something assumed. Like you're praying salah, you're praying for the sake of Allah, right? So the scholars don't make it. They don't make it a requirement. They don't make it a requirement, but you can say it, of course, and it's more complete. Yes. Yeah, intention is supposed to be done for every amal, every deed. And again, it depends on how you define intention. Is it something that you do consciously? You have to bring it to mind and think, and then you do it. Does that make sense? Or is it something that is just kind of, it's based on your knowledge, right? You know Allah, you believe in La ilaha illallah. Because of your belief, that is your intention. You're worshiping Allah, you're seeking knowledge of the deen, you're praying salah, you got out of your house, all of these a'mal, they're indications of your intention. Does that make sense? So a group of scholars, they said that is intention. Intention isn't that you have to pause and stop and consciously bring it to mind. Although that is the majority opinion, although that is what I practice myself very often. And I try to do that as often as I can, but it isn't, we have another opinion of the scholars that, to me it's more convincing. That intention is something based on knowledge and sincerity. It isn't something that you consciously have to bring to mind at every single moment. That is the best way, because that is a revival of your intention. Right? It is a purification of your intention, a strengthening of your intention, but it isn't a requirement. But the majority of our scholars, and if it's the majority, that means that there's a strong argument for it. And that is why, out of caution, I still practice that. I still practice on bringing it to mind, although the other opinion is more convincing to me. It has a stronger kind of argument, and it seems more in line with the human nature of thinking. The other process of consciously thinking of every behavior at every moment you do, it's something that is just unnatural. to the human being, and it takes a lot of conditioning to develop that. And we didn't find it being a common practice where they would pause. Some of the tabi'een used to do it, but so for that reason, it makes a strong sense. Like the example Imam Ahmad gave, it makes a strong sense. And so I don't think that you have to bring it to mind. As long as you know who you're doing it for Allah, you know what you're doing, you know it's wajib, khalas. Or you know it's sunnah, it's sufficient. That is sufficient. Wallahu a'lam. All right, let's read the sunnah of wudu. So this is more practical now. The intention is always a little bit complicated because it's such a psychological, it's very abstract, right? It isn't something action that you do, so it's something very intellectual. So some of the sunnahs of wudu, the author, rahimahullah, he's going to say the sunnah of wudu. The sunnah way to perform wudu, recite at-ta'awud. I take a'udhu. At-ta'awud is a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And then Bismillah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Truth be told, he's the only author I've seen say that it's recommended to say A'udhu Billah. All of the scholars that I've read before, they only say the sunnah to say Bismillah Rahman Rahim. There's no mentioning of A'udhu Billah. But the commentator's position is to say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. So that is his opinion. But the Bismillah is sufficient to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And the shorter version is also fine to say Bismillah in the shorter version. But the preferred version is always to add Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And then second, wash the hands up to and including the wrists 3 times. When you wash the hands in the beginning, you don't wash right before left. You wash them together, right? Interestingly, right? Other times, you wash your right arm first, left arm first. Right feet first, left feet first. But when you wash the hands, you do it simultaneously, 3 times. Then after that, he says, use the miswak, and then rinse the mouth and nose out 3 times with 3 handfuls of water. One takes in a mouthful from a handful of water and sniffs up some of the rest of the handful into the nostrils thrice. So a few sunnahs here. You use a miswak. After you wash your hand, you use the toothbrush. That is the opinion of the scholar here. Other scholars have argued that the miswak should be used before the washing of the hands. So either is fine. If you wash, either opinion is very strong and has strong argument. So here the commentator's opinion is you after you wash your hands, you brush your teeth. And the miswak is sunnah, but any toothbrush will do. Any toothbrush will do. So after you wash your hands, it is sunnah to brush your teeth after every wudu. After every wudu. The other opinion is to brush your teeth before wudu and then make your wudu. All right, so those are 2 options. I personally practice the second one, where you brush your teeth before wudu, and then I make my wudu after. So that is, so to brush your teeth is sunnah at every wudu. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. He said, if it wasn't, if it wouldn't be a burden for my ummah, I would have commanded them to brush their teeth at every prayer. The Prophet ﷺ, the only reason he didn't command us to brush our teeth at every prayer, like make it wajib, because it would be hard. People would forget. So out of mercy, he didn't make it wajib. But this hadith shows it is highly encouraged to brush our teeth at every salah, at every wudu. And then he mentions, how do you wash your mouth and nose? And so he says, you take a handful of water, absorb some of it, sip some of it, and then sniff some of it with your nose, and then blow it out and spit it out. And then you do that 3 times. So with 1 handful, you wash the mouth and nose. The other option is to wash the mouth by itself 3 times, to wash the nose by itself 3 times. So both are fine and both fulfill the sunnah. It's just you have 2 different options. Wallahu alam. And then he says, number 4, wash the entire face from the point where the hairline usually begins to the chin in length and from ear to ear in width 3 times. It is obligatory to wash all facial hair, inner and outer, as well as skin beneath the hair, whether the hair is thick or thin, such as the eyebrows, mustache, and so forth, except for a thick beard. So here he says that the washing of the face, that you have to wash the entire face. We said again, chin to jaw line, and then, hairline to jaw, to the chin, and then from ear to ear. And then it is sunnah to do it 3 times. The scholars, they say, don't splash water on your face. Carry the water with 2 hands and then let the water run down to the bottom. And then rub your eyebrows, rub your mustache, and then your beard, if it's thick, you just have to get over the beard. If your beard is thin to the point you can see the hair, the skin under the beard, then you have to wash, you have to rub under your beard, and you have to get the skin. Right? So for myself, I have to wash the skin under my beard. It is not thick enough where I can just simply cover it with my hand. But if a person does have a thick beard, then they have to rub the eyebrows if the eyebrows are thick, and to rub the mustache as well, and then the sides as well. And then for the beard, if it's thick, they simply just go over it. But if it's thin, they have to get under the skin. They have to make sure they rub under. The sunnah, even with the beard, is that you put your fingers under and you kind of rub under the beard. So that's also recommended when washing the face. Any questions about what we mentioned so far? Washing the hands, the rinsing of the mouth, nose, the washing of the face, the beard, the eyebrows, and so on. Mm-hmm. Just a small amount, very small amount. You sniff a little bit with your mouth and a little bit with your nose, and then you spit it back out. And when you're fasting, you do it very lightly, even less than normal. For the nose and mouth, you do it less than normal when you're fasting.
About people like blood come out of the nose, so they don't have to do it?
No, blood doesn't break your wudu.
No, I mean like if they put the water in the nose.
In the water, blood comes out, it's fine. That's once. They do it a second time, they keep doing it, yeah.
Or they have to do it?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a lot, then no. Because it's sunnah. So if it's harmful, then you don't have to do it. Yeah, if it's harmful, you don't have to do it because it's not wajib. But if it's just a little bit of blood, then, sniff and then just blow out the blood and so on. Yeah, inshallah ta'ala. Number 5, he says, wash both arms completely up to and including the elbows 3 times. It is sunnah to pass the fingers through each other. So it is sunnah that when you do your right arm, you pass the fingers through here, and then when you do your left arm, you pass the fingers through here. So you wash, you take water, you pour, you rub, do that. Second time, pour, rub, in between. Third time, pour, rub, in between. Right? And the same thing with the left. You take the water, pour, and then rub, in between. And these are all sunnah. These are all sunnah. And he said to do it 3 times. Number 6, wipe the head by passing the wet hands from the front of the head, sliding the pair hands to the back up to the nape of the neck, and then return them to the point of commencement 3 times. So you start from here, you put your fingers on the side, you start, you wipe back. That is the way of wiping the head up correctly. Now, he said here 3 times. All the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ say that he wiped his head once, except one hadith. There is one hadith where it says that the Prophet ﷺ wiped his head 3 times. And so the Shafi'i school, they took that hadith. They took that hadith. There is a hadith that says 3 times. They said then the wiping of the head should be 3 times. The majority of the scholars disagreed. They said that since all of the hadith stated that he wiped his head once, we're going to stick with that and prefer those hadith over the one with the wiping 3 times. So there are some argument, but there's a hadith for both opinions. So in the Shafi'i school, they prefer to wipe the head 3 times. The women, if they have long hair, they wipe back. They wipe back and they stop at the neck. They don't wipe anything beyond that. Yeah, so this is only wiping the head. Technically, you're wiping whatever is on the head, not beyond the head. So you stop at the neck. So if there's long hair, even for a man with long hair, wipes back to the hair, and that's sufficient. Yes. Even for shaved heads, because it says wipe the head, not the hair. Because the person would say, "Oh, it said wipe the." If you said wipe the hair, then you would think, "Okay, shaved head doesn't apply." But no, it says wipe the head. Yeah. Same thing. Whatever. Nope, just whatever's on the head. It doesn't have to be the skin. Whatever is on the head. If you have no hair, then your skin. If you have a little bit of hair, then the little bit. If you have a lot of hair, then that whatever of your hair. Does that make sense? But you're supposed to gather your hair and then wipe all the way back. No. And interestingly, right, it says wipe your head. Everything else is wash. Wipe your head. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. The ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah says wipe your head. not wash your head. So for the head, that's why you don't take water. You just make your hands wet and you wipe it. You just wipe your head. Yeah, so it doesn't have to reach the skin. No requirement of that.
Sir,
Yes, brother.
if you do only wajib and you skip
All the sunnah?
in turn sunnah,
Yes,
your salah is valid?
100%. 100%. So if you went to the bathroom, you took water, you made your intention, wash your face one time, wash your arm one time, wash your other arm one time, wipe your head like this, wash your feet, go. That's it. Go pray. Let's say all you have is a water bottle, and maybe you don't have enough water for all your limbs, and you feel it might not be enough. Khalas, you just do the wajib. There are circumstances. Let's say the time is running. You woke up 10 minutes before Fajr. Time is leaving. You go quick, you make wudu quickly, you go pray. So there are circumstances where actually doing the minimum might be a better option because there's a greater obligation waiting for you, right? So it's not to recommend it, but it's to just let us know that, hey, these are the minimum. And it also tells you what you cannot get wrong, right? If you skipped your nose, you're like, okay, do I have to go back? No, it's okay, bismillah, you're done, go pray your salah. You forgot your mouth, go bismillah. But you're like, I forgot to wipe my head. Okay, you have to go repeat your wudu. You see, so it's important to know, because if you skip the sunnah, you're fine. You go pray your salah, it's not a big deal. But you skip the wajib, then you have to go redo that whole wudu and the entire salah again. So that's why the scholars, they mention in that form, so that you know what's obligatory and what's optional. Does that clarify? All right, let's continue. We are on number 7 here on the book. For those who don't have the book, we have the book available in the office, inshallah. Brother, we can grab some for you, inshallah. Quran, if you want, you can grab a few and give it to the brothers so they can follow along. Inshallah, we're almost done also. Number 7, the author says, or the commentator, he says, wipe the inside of the ears with the fingertips and their outside with the thumbs with fresh water 3 times. So the way he says, the index finger, the pointy finger, you wipe with the inside of the ear. You kind of like, you're not just doing this. Some people think it's just this, but it's actually you're kind of going around the space of the inner ear. You're kind of going around the space of the inner ear, and then with the outer ear, you're using your thumb, like that. So you're doing this, and then you do this. Did everybody get that? How you wipe the ear? So you don't just do this, and that's it. All right, that's part of the sunnah. But to do the entire sunnah is to take your fingers inside, go around in the inner part of the ear, get the outer part of the ear, and then use your palm. That's the complete way our mashayikh showed us to wipe your ears. That was the complete way to wipe your ears. So that's how you wipe the ears, inshallah ta'ala. Number 8, he says 3 times again because there's one hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he did his head and ears 3 times. So the Shafi'iyya took that school. That's their preferred method of wudu. Again, they're both in the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ did both. There's the hadith for both. But the majority of the hadith say 1 time. So that's what the majority of our scholars took. There's one hadith that says 3 times, and so the Shafi'iyya took that opinion. Whatever you choose, stick to it and be consistent with it. And so if you stick to the Shafi'i school strictly, then that is the way, inshallah ta'ala. And if you choose to get out of it, there's no harm. Wallahu a'lam. Typically, our scholars, they advise to be consistent with one school of thought as much as possible. They say picking and choosing between schools of thought aren't recommended unless it's with the guidance of a teacher or if there's strong evidence that persuaded you other ways. But to just kind of cherry pick between madhahib is something that our scholars, criticize, pretty very clearly. They said it's very problematic and can create a lot of inconsistencies and lead to haram and it could even be a fisq, a sin. It could be a sin, and so they don't encourage kind of cherry picking between madhahib. They say pick one, stick to it. But if there are masail, individual masail, you can adopt a different opinion, and this can be because of hardship. Because maybe the opinion of your school is too hard, you can adopt something easier. Or you found evidence that really convinced you otherwise, and you did your due research. You can't just, but you actually did research and you found. Or you have the guidance of a teacher to provide you an alternative opinion. So all of those are appropriate ways to get out of the school of thought. But Those are just, and so I don't want to make it seem like we're just leaving the madhab conveniently. We're going to stick to the madhab as much as we can, but we're going to provide alternatives if there is a strong evidence for it, or if there is hardship, extreme hardship in the school of Shafi'i, and the intention is one of those masail that is extremely hard to practice. Okay, number 8, he says, the commentator, Jazahullah khairan, wash the feet up to including the ankles 3 times. Allow the water to pass between the toes by using the little finger of the left hand, beginning with the little toe of the right foot and ending with the little toe on the left foot. So here, when you wash the feet 3 times, and they recommend that you wash between your toes to wash. And they recommend the little finger because that fits better, right? And they recommend the left hand because we use the left hand for cleaning more than we use the right hand. The feet is usually, dirty, so you don't use your eating hand, you use your left hand. And then you start with the, right side and then move on to the left. So that is sunnah, not wajib. It is sunnah. Unless there's dirt in your feet, then it's wajib, because you have to remove any barrier that might be preventing the wudu. And then he says, number 9, during the wudu, it's sunnah to wash the limbs successfully, right? To wash it very carefully is sunnah. Number 2, he says to begin with the right when washing the arms and legs, but both hands, cheeks, or ears are washed simultaneously. So he said right and left is only for the right hand versus left hand, and right feet versus left feet, but for the hands, the cheeks, the ears, you do it all simultaneously. And then he says to begin with the top of the face and not to splash water on it. So we said that when you wash your face, you fill up your hand with water and then you pour down to your face. Now, a lot of people, especially children, they'll just splash water on their face and kind of rub, kind of messy. That's not the best way to make wudu. The recommended way is to start from the top and get it down. Have your thumbs kind of go down, covering the sides of your face all the way to the bottom of your chin. And then he said to avoid splashing water onto oneself. It's a form of wasting water and just bad etiquette. To face the qibla when making wudu. Also to not talk except for a necessity as well. To not talk except for a necessity. It's just like to talk when making wudu. SubhanAllah, one of the ibtila'at of this time is, using the phone has become so common when going to the restroom. That's something that's considered bad etiquette in our deen. And so that's something that, although it's very common and very, just practiced, but it is an etiquette that is looked down upon and disliked in Sharia. And then the last one, to not waste water. With running water, it's very easy to waste water. And so we want to teach ourselves to, be moderate and control the pressure of the water to the, best of our ability. And just to try to be more mindful about how much water we use. And then here he says the cleanliness of the body, and then we'll stop inshallah ta'ala here. The cleanliness of the body, he said it is sunnah to trim the fingernails and toenails, to clip the mustache to the extent that the pink of the upper lip is visible. It should not be plucked or shaved. And so he said again, to trim the fingernails, toenails, and also to clip the mustache. You cut the mustache. You don't shave it or you don't pluck it. And then he says over here, the third, to pluck the hair of the underarms and nostrils. So the underarm is sunnah to pluck the underarm here. If the plucking is too painful, then the second option is to shave. But the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, shave the pubic hair and pluck your underarm hair. So underarm hair is supposed to be plucked, and then the pubic hair is supposed to be shaved, and the mustache is supposed to be trimmed. So those are just 3 different ways of cutting hair. 3 different ways of cutting hair. Each area has its own recommended method. So that's something important to be mindful of. If one is not able to pluck it or it's too painful, then the second option is to shave. Number 4, to apply kuhl, an antimonic compound. So it's, kuhl is on the eyelashes. On the eyelashes to apply some kuhl. That is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. To apply henna for women. It is sunnah for women to apply henna regularly, and we see this often practiced by our elders, and so this is something that is sunnah for women in general. And then he says, rahimahullah, circumcision is wajib for both men and women. And circumcision has been a highly, highly controversial issue of today. Even within Islamic scholars, there's been a lot of dispute, and the madhahib have differed. For men, it's generally agreed upon that circumcision is wajib. that it is wajib to circumcise boys. And the reason is the extra layer of skin prevents the flow of the urine, and it leads to being najis. And so that's why our scholars, they say the circumcision for boys is wajib because of the purity. For women, the Shafi'i school holds it's wajib, but there's really no strong evidence to say it's wajib. Modern kind of movements and they call this female genital mutilation. They actually consider it a form of mutilating a human being. So they say it's actually like a form of a crime, and it is considered a form of oppression. A lot can be said. Even circumcision for women in countries differs how they practice. And so some people they circumcise the women to the extent that it deprives her of kind of any type of gratification when she's married. And even makes intercourse painful for women. And so that circumcision is haram. That type is haram. Anything that brings harm to a person is haram. But this is supposed to be a light, moderate circumcision that a lot of our scholars recommended, and there's a lot of nusus to support it. There are some Muslim doctors and medical researchers that say it has medical benefits. Other Muslim scholars have said no. They said there's no really dalil, clear, correct, authentic evidence to say it's recommended for women to be circumcised. And so with the circumcision of women, it's highly controversial. There is no explicit, authentic evidence to say that it has to be done. And so with women, if a person does do it, make sure it's done appropriately. And I don't even know if I would recommend it, especially because of the malpractice that has become so widespread. But for the boys, for sure, that it is not to be done. As for scientists, like I said, majority of modern scientists and research studies, especially in the West, they'll call it female genital mutilation, and so they say it's an injustice and oppression towards women, and so that's something to be mindful of when having for those who have newborn and children, inshallah ta'ala. And then he says after that, the commentator, it is haram for both men and women to dye their hair black, except with the intention of jihad. And so generally, some scholars said it's makruh. This is strongly debated as well. If it's haram to dye the hair black, there are hadiths that prohibit it, and so here the author he mentions the opinion that it is haram. And so in general, yes, men and women should not dye their hair black. It is prohibited. There's a lot of prohibition, and the opinion that I've always followed and adopted is that it's haram. It shouldn't be done. Any other color is fine. A boy or a girl can dye their hair with any other color, green, red, purple, whatever they like. It's permissible. There's no problem, unless it identifies with some type of religion or some type of faith, then at that point it's prohibited. We mentioned before, with hair, there's really nothing haram about haircuts. There are certain things about haircuts that are, haircuts that are haram, that are makruh, disliked. To shave part of the hair and to leave the other part is disliked, but it's not haram. And as for hair color, the only color that is haram is black. And even that, it isn't unanimous, but it is a very strong opinion with strong evidence. And so that is the only color that should be avoided when dyeing the hair, especially for older folks. Sometimes they want to, get rid of the gray hair. And so that is something to pay attention to. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is that if a person doesn't have gray hair, they dye it with henna. So that is the actual sunnah. So if a person has gray hair emerging, then it is recommended for them to dye the hair with henna, inshallah ta'ala. And that is the end of tonight's lesson. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والحمد لله رب العالمين.